My name is Jack, and I'm an American soldier serving overseas. For the past 5 years, I've been shuttling between the front lines and the base, but every time I think about the warm kitchen at home, about Emily, it all feels worth it. We've always gotten along well, not just as a couple, but more like partners. Every time I hear her voice on the phone, I can feel her laughter, as if it lights up the whole world. We even started planning to open a small restaurant after I retire. A tiny place with photos on the walls, herbs growing on the windowsill, and the scent of coffee and freshly baked bread filling the air every morning. Every time I think about it, my heart feels warm. That day, as usual, I was organizing my gear at the base when Ryan came over, patted me on the shoulder and said with a smile, "Hey man, your wife got you something." I froze for a moment, feeling a bit relieved. "Something? What is it?" He handed me a small package, a faintly mysterious look in his eyes. "She wanted you to see it." I took the package and opened it. It was just a bunch of cooking magazines. The covers displayed all kinds of dishes, making your mouth water just looking at them. Normally, Emily wouldn't let anyone send me anything casually, and she certainly wouldn't let me receive something like this alone. I flipped through a few pages and felt nothing special, yet a subtle unease crept in, as if there was more to this than met the eye. I put the magazines on the table and called Emily, trying to make my voice sound relaxed. "Hey baby, how's your day?" On the other end, her voice was cold as ice. "It's fine." I tried to make small talk and slowly brought up the package. "Emily, I got that magazine package. Did you have someone send it to me?" She paused, a hint of distance in her tone. "Oh, just some magazines, nothing serious." I sensed a strangeness in her voice, not the warm tone I was used to, not the easy teasing she would normally do. In that instant, it felt like something had stabbed my heart. My heartbeat quickened, my breathing became shallow. Instinctively, I felt there was something hidden behind all this. In the following days, I kept trying to reach her, but she was always evasive. Occasionally, she would reply with just a few words, sometimes not at all. That coldness made me increasingly anxious. Our 5-year relationship felt like a thick glass suddenly shattered by some force. Every time I picked up my phone, I wanted to hear her gentle voice, to see her familiar smile, but reality kept hitting me over and over again. Finally, Ryan quietly approached me, showing me some clues he had found in emails Emily had sent me. A man's name, David, appearing frequently in the emails, with a tone that was ambiguous, even intimate. Seeing those words, I froze. 5 years of trust, 5 years of love seemed to be cut in an instant by a sharp blade. My mind went blank. Anger, pain, and disappointment surged like a tidal wave. I recalled every moment with Emily, her shy smile when we first met, her soft voice in late-night calls, the warmth of cooking together on weekends. All of it now seemed like an illusion. Every bit of happiness ripped apart. My hands held the phone, fingers cold, my heart filled with unspeakable pain. I tried messaging and calling Emily, but she kept avoiding me, responding coldly. A few days later, she sent a formal email, a divorce agreement. The content was blunt. "Jack, let's end this. You walk away with nothing." I held the phone, hands trembling. 5 years of love destroyed by a single email. In that moment, the world seemed to spin. The air felt frozen. I tried to breathe, but my chest felt like a massive stone pressing down. The base in front of me, my comrades far away, Emily at home. All these images collided, like a nightmare, but I didn't cry. I didn't break down. Something inside me was burning. Anger, disappointment, and a strong determination. Not impulsive revenge, but a calm flame telling me, I will not give up like this. I need to uncover the truth. I will make this betrayal pay. Under the dim light, I sat at the table, staring at the magazines and emails, analyzing every detail in my mind. Emily's attitude, David's appearance, every sentence in the emails, everything was like a puzzle, and I had to piece it together. Though painful, I knew this was the moment to stay calm. I'm not just a soldier. I have experience. I have wisdom, and I can reclaim everything my way. I leaned back in the chair, eyes resolute. The world seemed to have closed its doors on me, but I knew that one day I would open my own window. I would uncover the truth, make the betrayers pay, and I would stand in the light again. After I completely calmed down, I realized my mind was operating with an unusual clarity. The anger was still there, but it had transformed into a driving force rather than an uncontrollable blaze. Emily's coldness, David's appearance, the divorce email, all of it felt like scattered chess pieces, and I had to assemble them into a complete game. I first went to Ryan, and we sat in the base's small lounge, the ceiling lights flickering. Dimly, Ryan looked at me, his eyes full of questions and concern. "Jack, are you really going to..." Investigate this yourself? I nodded, my tone calm. I need to know the truth, Ryan. I won't let these people toy with me in my life. We started tracing every thread connecting Emily and David. Emails, magazines, occasional call records, social media. Every piece of information I could find, I examined. Ryan helped me organize a timeline, listing Emily and David's contact, frequency, tone of messages, travel records, all in a spreadsheet. The numbers and dates on the sheet looked cold, but to me, each point could be the key to breaking their plan. David, the so-called bank manager, was clearly more than just a friend in Emily's life. From the emails, I could sense his careful, ambiguous flirtation like he was playing a secret game. Ryan warned me, "Jack, be careful. He's not an ordinary guy." I took a deep breath, a sharp light in my eyes. Careful or not, I can't just wait for them to decide my fate. Over the next few days, I quietly reached out to people Emily had mentioned, trying to draw out more information about David. Among military families, there were many victims, some financially scammed, some merely threatened. Using my experience and status as a soldier, I convinced them I could help. Each conversation was careful, yet conveyed sincerity. Gradually, some of David's secrets emerged. He wasn't just flirting. He had a scheme targeting military families, involving fund transfers and illegal account operations. I knew I couldn't act recklessly. Going straight to the police might work, but everything could be exposed prematurely. What I wanted most was control. I began to craft a plan, scrutinizing each step. I reset my mind to zero, as if back in the barracks on a mission. Every action had to be precise and meticulous. Late at night, I sat on the bed, my laptop casting a faint glow. Coffee in hand, Ryan helped me cross-check the clues. Every piece of evidence, every record was like a puzzle. Email timestamps, David's social media activity, Emily's whereabouts. I mapped their movements bit by bit. My plan started to take shape. First, gather irrefutable evidence, make David think he had the upper hand, then gradually reveal the truth. But this was not just about revenge. I kept telling myself, I want justice, not only for myself, but for those David might harm. This thought made me even calmer. The pain remained, but it was no longer blind anger. It had become reason and resolve. I even began to simulate possible scenarios. If David tried to threaten me, or if Emily betrayed me for money, how would I respond? Every detail I rehearsed in my mind. How to lure David into a trap, how to make Emily believe I had given up, how to ensure every piece of evidence worked at the crucial moment. I became both planner and warrior. Ryan watched me and couldn't help but comment, "Jack, you're like a detective and a special ops soldier all at once." I gave a wry smile. No choice, this is the only way I can stay in control. We mapped out several key points. David had to think he won, and Emily had to believe everything was going according to her plan. Meanwhile, I secretly contacted the victims to confirm each lead. Every step had to be solid, no mistakes. I also set mental boundaries for myself. I would not let anger dictate my actions, nor let despair consume me. Each night before sleeping, I silently repeated, calm, collect, wait, strike. These 4 words became my action guide. On the surface, my life at the base remained peaceful, organizing gear, training, routine tasks. No one knew that beneath this calm, Jack had quietly set a chessboard for revenge. Every smile, every casual conversation was a cover for the edge I carried inside. I became more vigilant and cautious. I knew this battle had no smoke or gunfire, but it was more dangerous than any battlefield. David was smart, Emily was cunning, and I had to be faster, more precise, and colder than them. Every clue in my hands, every plan in my mind could determine the final outcome. Late at night, I closed my laptop and leaned back in my chair. The wind outside rustled the tin roof, making a soft thudding sound. I knew this was just the beginning. Deep inside, I was certain, when the time came, I would make them understand. I was not someone easily defeated. Few evenings later, I was sitting in the small office at the base, holding a cup of coffee, while Ryan flipped through the notes. David's name appeared on every page, and a clear plan was forming in my mind. Right now, the most important thing wasn't direct confrontation. It was letting them feel triumphant. I deliberately played the part of a defeated man. On the surface, my responses to Emily and David were cold and despondent, as if their scheme had completely broken me. On the phone, my voice sounded low and resigned. "Emily, all right, you're right, let's separate." There was a trace of helplessness in my tone, but inside I was sharper and more focused than ever. Hearing this, Emily would likely feel she had won, and David would probably let his guard down even further. Ryan frowned. "Jack, are you sure about this? If it's too obvious, won't they get suspicious?" I shook my head, eyes calm. "Exactly because it's obvious, they won't suspect a thing. I need David to think he controls everything, and Emily to believe I've given up. The more obedient I seem, the easier it is for them to fall into my trap. Over the next few days, I started arranging chance encounters. David and Emily would occasionally appear in social settings, and I always acted tired and indifferent. Emily would initiate conversation. I responded briefly. David tried to provoke topics. I acted casually. Every interaction, I carefully observed their reactions, analyzing the weak points in their mental state. Meanwhile, I quietly contacted the victims, compiling their clues into a complete chain of evidence. Every piece of information they provided gave me more insight into David's methods and weaknesses. His scam wasn't just about money. It exploited trust and fear. I silently vowed he would pay for these actions. I even conducted mental rehearsals in my room. What if David tried to threaten me? What if Emily demanded extra conditions? How would I respond to keep control of the entire situation? Each imagined scenario was as realistic as possible, considering every detail, including their potential reactions and my countermeasures. Ryan watched me and couldn't help teasing, "Jack, you're more professional than any detective I know." I smiled wryly. "Detective? No, I'm just a soldier. I just know how to survive in danger." On the surface, life continued as usual. Training, routine tasks, base life. I followed the schedule as if nothing had happened. But inside, I had already set the entire chessboard. Every interaction with Emily and David was a careful probe of their limits, guiding them step by step toward the direction I had planned. Emily began to look smug, thinking she controlled the situation, always tentatively presenting conditions to me. I nodded slightly, voice low. "All right, you're right." Each reply was accompanied by silent calculations in my mind. What should I do next? How to make David fall into the trap? David grew increasingly confident. At one social event, he even said to me, "Jack, just let go. Everything is under my control." I smiled faintly, a trace of fatigue in my tone. Maybe. But in my mind, I knew very clearly. I was steadily leading him into the net I had set. Once, I arranged what seemed like a coincidental private meeting. David was completely off guard, believing I had willingly surrendered. Emily was beside him, wearing a self-satisfied smile. In that moment, I could almost feel their smugness, but I knew deep down I controlled everything. I reminded myself quietly, everything must proceed slowly, without rush. Rushing would expose flaws, and once discovered, my plan would fail. I reviewed the entire setup in my mind. I must act submissive, letting Emily and David think I've given up and no longer pose a threat. All evidence must be collected, so that when the time comes, the authorities can catch David immediately. I must mentally outmaneuver them, making David believe he has won, and Emily think she controls everything. Finally, at the crucial moment, I will lay all evidence and facts bare before their eyes. Ryan whispered beside me, "Jack, you've set this up beautifully, but you also need to stay safe." I nodded, fingers tapping the desk, silently repeating, "Calm, patient, precise strike. Every piece must move according to plan." Late at night, I sat in the office, the glow of the computer reflecting in my eyes. Looking at the plan I had, a swirl of emotions filled me. The thrill of revenge tinged with nervous anticipation. I knew this was only the planning stage. The real confrontation hadn't begun. But I was confident. Everything was under my control. Outside, the wind rustled the tin roof, making soft thudding sounds. I leaned back in my chair, a slight smile on my lips. David would never suspect that he was not actually in control, that he thought he had won this game, while I had long since taken the entire board into my hands. The next step was to close the net. That evening, I stood at the cafe's entrance, taking a deep breath. My heart raced with both tension and excitement. After all the planning, patience, and waiting, the moment to reveal the truth had finally arrived. Emily and David were completely off guard, believing Jack had surrendered entirely, and I was ready to shock them. Inside the cafe, David was already waiting, dressed in his well-tailored suit, fiddling with his phone, a confident smile on his face. I walked in and nodded slightly. "Hey, David." My voice carried fatigue and submission, like a soldier admitting defeat. Emily sat nearby, her eyes glinting with self-satisfaction. "Jack, you're here. I hope you've thought this through." Her words carried a subtle test, as if she wanted to confirm I had truly given up. I gave a faint smile and spoke softly. "Yeah, I've thought it through. Let's go with whatever you say." There was a hint of resignation in my tone, but my eyes remained ice cold. Emily's lips curved slightly, and David's expression turned victorious. just as I had planned. I exchanged a few casual words with David. He visibly relaxed and began boasting about his so-called plan. "Jack, you see, it's really simple. If you cooperate, we can handle everything easily." I nodded, feigning weakness. "Yeah, maybe you're right." As he gloated, I quietly slid the folder I'd brought under the table. Inside were all the pieces of evidence of his fraud: bank transaction records, emails, victim lists, screenshots of hidden accounts. Each document was like a sword, ready to expose his scheme at any moment. The cafe seemed to be filled with David's overconfidence. I whispered to myself, "Stay calm, don't reveal any flaws." My eyes scanned Emily, who was quietly talking with David, completely unaware of the calculation running through my mind. Over the next few minutes, David began to boast about his cleverness, detailing how he planned to further exploit victims' funds. His voice was full of confidence and contempt. I pretended to frown slightly, feigning thoughtfulness. Sounds impressive. This made him even more relaxed. He even took out his phone to show some so-called techniques. I studied each piece of information, silently noting and confirming every detail. Then, I spoke slowly. "David, actually, I did some investigating too." He froze, a flicker of alertness in his eyes, but it quickly turned to disdain. "Investigating? You, Jack? What could you possibly find out?" I smiled, pulling the folder from my bag and gently placing it on the table with a decisive thud, like a declaration. Emily's smile instantly froze, her hand trembling slightly. David's confident expression turned to shock. I slowly opened the folder, displaying every piece of evidence before them: screenshots of bank transactions, email exchanges, victim lists, and detailed steps of David's fraud scheme. Each page was indisputable. Each piece of information hit David's pride like a hammer. David's face gradually paled. He tried to defend himself. This isn't what you think," I sneered. "David, every step you plotted I knew." "Emily, think your triumph was premature? You really thought I would just give up?" A flicker of fear appeared in Emily's eyes. She stepped back, her voice trembling. "Jack, how did you know?" I reached out, pushing the folder toward them. "Because I'm not someone who's easily defeated. I've watched your plan from start to finish. David, your fraudulent actions. I've compiled the evidence and the authorities will act immediately." David panicked, trying to flee, fumbling for his phone, but it was too late. Ryan had already contacted the police outside. Minutes later, several squad cars pulled into the cafe, and David was taken into custody on the spot. Emily stood nearby, her face pale, realizing all her schemes had failed. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling a long breath. A feeling of unprecedented relief washed over me. 5 years of trust had been betrayed, but justice had finally prevailed. I hadn't let anger control me. Instead, I had used intelligence and patience to take control of the situation. As Emily was taken away by the authorities, her eyes were filled with regret and fear. David was escorted into the police car, panicking and shouting. Watching it, all I silently said to myself, "It's over, but life is just beginning." I packed up the folder and glanced around the now empty cafe, a small smile forming in my heart. 5 years of pain, 5 years of waiting, had all been transformed into this moment of calm and victory. I understood now. The truly strong are not the impulsive, but those who know how to wait, plan, and use their wisdom to master fate. Night had deepened as I stepped out of the cafe. The breeze brushed against my face, carrying a chill, yet it brought clarity. I knew this battle was over, but my life would continue. The life that truly belonged to me was about to begin anew. The sound of police sirens gradually faded as I stood at the cafe's entrance. The night wind was chilly against my face, but my mind was unusually clear. David had been taken away by the authorities, and Emily was under investigation for her involvement. My revenge plan had finally come to its conclusion. Leaning against a car, I reflected on the past few months, from the moment I received that stack of magazines, to analyzing emails, investigating David, contacting the victims, and setting up the entire trap. Every step was tense and suspenseful, yet I had remained composed. Now, with the dust settled, I could finally breathe. Ryan walked over, patting my shoulder. "Jack, I've got to say, you really outdid yourself this time." Smiled faintly, a trace of exhaustion in my eyes. "It's not about being brilliant. It's about staying calm. Anger can't accomplish anything. Only patience and strategy lead to victory." A few days later, I received notice from the court. David would face charges for fraud and attempted fraud, while Emily, for her assistance, was required to return part of the assets and face corresponding legal consequences. Seeing this, I exhaled in relief. Though the marriage could never be salvaged, at least justice had been served. I began organizing my finances and future plans. For the past months, nearly all my time had been consumed by investigation and plotting. Now, I could finally rethink the future. I called several victims and each expressed gratitude, saying that if not for me, they might have suffered even greater losses. This gave me an unprecedented sense of fulfillment. Not only had I reclaimed justice for myself, but I had also helped others. One day, I walked alone into the space where we had once planned to open a restaurant. The empty kitchen, the walls waiting to be decorated, every corner was full of potential. I lightly touched the counter, closing my eyes, imagining the laughter and aromas of the future. I pictured every meal, every smiling customer, every warm moment. This was the beginning of a new chapter in my life. At the same time, I realized a profound truth. In life, there will always be betrayal and deceit, but the truly strong remain clear-headed in pain and use wisdom to control the situation. Revenge is not the goal. It is a response to being wronged, a manifestation of strength. I set a new goal for myself, not just running a restaurant, but using my experience to guide and help others, especially military families who might be targets of scammers. I began planning an online platform to provide legal assistance, fraud prevention guides, and psychological support. My past experiences had shown me that individual power is limited, but by helping more people, the world could become safer. At night, I stood at the store's entrance, my shadow stretched long under the streetlights. The wind blew, and I felt a sense of true freedom, not just freedom in possessions or justice, but freedom of the soul. The shadows of Emily and David faded, and my future was only beginning. I gently pushed open the door, smelling the faint scent of wooden floors. The kitchen windows let in soft light, as if telling me, every painful experience is meant to make oneself stronger. I whispered to myself, Jack, you can finally live a real life. The stars twinkled in the night sky. I knew that all these experiences had become my most valuable treasures: courage, wisdom, patience, and calm. The past pain was no longer a chain, but a source of strength, helping me rise, reclaim my life, and master my destiny. Months later, my new restaurant opened. The aroma of coffee and baked bread filled the air. Every table, every smile, radiated warmth. Watching the customers' faces, I smiled softly. Perhaps in life, it is only after betrayal and challenge that we can finally embrace the happiness that truly belongs to us.